In 7 sprints, loving life on Saturday afternoons, isn't he? Pecco Bagnaia, I believe he'll have his hands full today dealing with the increasing and big threat from a fellow Ducati rider, Lewis. Jorge Martin up to second now in the World Championship after his second sprint win in the last 3 on a super Saturday afternoon for Pramac Racing. Martin looking really, really strong as a serious title threat.
The form rider, arguably, in MotoGP right now. If you cast your minds back to Jerez, when he finished in 4th place in both the sprint and the main race, he has not been off the podium since then. As Jorge Martin, which is why he's now second in the World Championship, 21 points adrift of the World Championship leader Pecco Bagnaia, we see now walking into the Ducati box. Just a quick message from our colleague Jack Appleyard, who just said in English, Marc Marquez said to him, "I don't feel ready to race." So those were the words straight from the horse's mouth. That was what Marc Marquez said to Jack Appleyard there down in the paddock. Marquez deciding he wasn't ready to race after the injury that he sustained this morning, and just the combination of crashes which have made this a German GP weekend from hell for the number 93. And just a quick line on that: everyone else on the grid incidentally does shuffle up forwards. There will not be an empty spot on the grid, so that will promote Alex Marquez to 7th, Binder to 8th, Aleix Espargaro onto the 3rd row, and so on. So as Matt said, it will be a 19 rider grid for the German Grand Prix,
led by the world champion, 26-year-old Italian Pecco Bagnaia, who was in dreamland last weekend, completing the first treble of the season in Mugello in front of his adoring fans. The pole position, sprint win, and then the Grand Prix win. The Ducati winless here. Can you believe this? In 15 years since Casey Stoner took the checkered flag first back in 2008. Fabio Quartararo then, can you believe this? His last race win was here at the Sachsenring, and since that race he has not led a single lap since we were right here 1 year ago when he fended off the hard-charging compatriot Johann Zarco. Down to you, Simon.
Yes, just waiting for Piero Taramasso to come talk to us, and also Maio Marigali. I'm stalking outside the Yamaha garage, and I've noticed that Fabio is gone for, you don't often see this, just in the race change something, you know, going into Sunday's race. And Fabio's going for the one style of wing on both bikes, the rear wing that's on the seat unit, and Morbidelli with the other that's more like the Stegosaurus, like the Ducati one. Fabio's gone for one that's kind of a triangle with a big surface area on the top. I'm sure you'll spot it, but it just shows to me that they are using this race even for testing, you know, for development, to try something. I'll come back to you when I find Maio or Piero Taramasso about tyres.
Thanks for that, Simon. Yeah, well, anything will help Yamaha right now as they're stuck in a big rut, aren't they? There is Marc Marquez's quote then, a quick quote to Jack Appleyard: "I don't feel ready to race." What a shame that is, as Marc Marquez's injury nightmare shows no sign of ending, doesn't it? As we mentioned, he came into this weekend fully expecting, I'm sure, to be fighting for that 12th consecutive victory. But it will be 11 wins his last 11 starts here in the Sachsenring, of course, having withdrawn from this Grand Prix. It's Matt Burton Lewis, Sotheby, as always, talking you through this Premier Class action with Simon Crafar down in pit lane. This man had a really strong sprint yesterday, Luca Marini. He's been the top 5 now in the last 3 sprints. He had to work very, very hard, though, yesterday for that 4th place, coming under relentless pressure from the hard-charging Brad Binder and Johann Zarco behind him. The Mini VR46 Ducati man took his first World Championship podium here back in 2018. Now then, of course, as always, in the Sachsenring with so many left-handers, so much stress on the left-hand side of the front and the rear tyre choice and tyre management, absolutely pivotal. Let's get some pre-race thoughts of Michelin Motorsport manager Piero Taramasso with Simon.
Piero, a couple of years ago, I remember you showing me a graph that showed Sachsenring was up there as the really tough circuit on tyres, like with Phillip Island. I think it might have been Thailand. Can you tell us why this place is so hard on rubber?
Yeah, this place is very difficult from a tyre point of view, because you have a lot of corner on the left, a very few on the right side. So you need a very resistant compound on the left side, a very soft compound on the right side. So very asymmetric tire. That's why we have a specific tire for this track. We use a specific front tire, asymmetric, with this technology, with the different compound in the front. is the only track like Valencia and Phillip Island where we use this kind of tire just to compensate this asymmetric left and right side for the tire. So this is one point. The second point, the left side is really stressed. What happened? You spend a lot of time on the lean angle on the left, and the more you stay lean, the more you build up temperature. So the temperature goes up. Then the tire is tendencies to heat, to overheat, and then to spin. And when you spin, you wear, so you have some consumption. So it's a combination of tire consumption, tire temperature, and it's very hard to manage that. So this is the results.
Before we head to the grid, can you give us an idea? I can see that the temperatures is one of the hottest periods of the weekend. I imagine that the hard compound front that everybody loves, it'll be warm enough for that. But on the rear, what do you think they'll go for?
Yes, track temperature now is 44. We never reached this temperature this weekend. Last year we had 50 degrees on the track, so it was very hot. So for today's race, the hard front will be the choice for everybody, and the rear medium also. Maybe only one or two riders they will try the soft on the rear, but more than 90% of the riders will go with the medium rear. Because of the high temperature. Yesterday for the sprint the soft was okay, but it was cooler, it was a short race. But for today the soft is a little bit risky.
Last question. I've seen it before last year when that temperature was really high, following in a group, getting too much heat from the bikes in front on that front tire. Is that the case also this weekend?
So yesterday was not an issue, but because a short race and also the temperature was lower. Today could be, yes, it could be some riders, they might be affected about that. Also because here, many bikes, they stay in traffic, it's difficult to pass. And so we have to see how they can manage.
Thank you, Piero.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, as always, to the always interesting insight from Piero Taramasso. Yeah, it's the hottest condition we've had of the weekend so far. As Piero said, cooler than the race here 1 year ago when we were right in the midst of a sort of European summer heat wave, weren't we? It was absolutely scorching here in the Sachsenring 1 year ago. We just saw there, didn't we, Marc Marquez leaving the Honda truck with a bit of bandaging on that left thumb. It was the career-threatening right thumb injury which ruled Marquez out of 3 Grand Prix earlier on this season. As we said, let's just hope he's fighting fit and back on that Honda in Assen in a couple of weeks' time. Just a quick glimpse there before we pop back down to Simon. Maverick Vinales inside the factory Aprilia garage. The Top Gun firing blanks at the moment, isn't he? The 28-year-old Spaniard's having a real tough weekend, crashing out of the sprint yesterday. First time he's not seen a checkered flag in the new sprint format. Simon, some additions to the thoughts of Piero Taramasso there?
Well, just to give the listeners an idea about what I was talking to Piero about the heat from the bikes in front. Last year, with that heat waves, and he was saying like 50 degrees then, 44 now on the track, but the air temperature was quite a bit higher. Last year, riders told me that if you were behind a group, further back in the field, it was unbearable, like literally burning the bare skin on your neck, too hot. And one engineer I asked said they've got a sensor in the air intake, to gather information, and they registered over 80, I think he said 84 degrees coming in to the air intake, so which made me believe the riders. And that's the problem for the front tyre as well as you can imagine if you spend too long behind multiple bikes, which is worse than one bike, kicking off that heat, you literally, you use too much energy, too much sweat. It's too hard to handle at the back of a group.
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. This is going to be a tricky one, isn't it? If you do get mired further down the pack. Frankie Morbidelli yesterday, Aleix Espargaro in particular on the factory Aprilia, they were starting from 4th and 5th rows. They encountered a pretty big issue, a big spike in front tyre temperature. It makes it so hard to overtake. This man, though, all he's having in terms of spikes, the big spike in form. He comes into this a full distance, a feature-length German Grand Prix, riding the crest of a wave, doesn't he? Jorge Martin, 5 successive podiums, and this was the catalyst in the sprint yesterday, this daring move on the inside of both Miller and Bagnaia into turn number 12, just seconds after he sived his way through. He lost the front on that Pramac Racing Ducati, one of several near misses for Martin in that Tissot sprint yesterday. But now he is Pecco Bagnaia's closest title adversary, 21 points the gap between him and Pecco Bagnaia going into this German Grand Prix. Jorge Martin, he's been as good as Bagnaia, really, hasn't he, in the sprint on Saturday? That was the moment where it was almost disaster, wasn't it? Just coming 3 or 4 seconds after he'd got on the inside of both Bagnaia and Miller. And for the second time in 3 sprints, the man who takes the checkered flag first, getting the approval there from his Pramac Ducati teammate Johann Zarco, was Jorge Martin. There's not many boxes left to tick in 2023 for this young man, Lewis, but one of them is a Sunday Grand Prix win.
Yeah, he's been waiting for quite a long time. Of course, just the one Grand Prix victory for Jorge Martin, which came nearly 2 years ago now, the Styrian Grand Prix of 2021. That is a big tick that Jorge Martin wants to add to the box, and of course if he does do that, it will bring him even closer into the championship reckoning with Pecco Bagnaia. Pecco Bagnaia did say yesterday he was expecting this kind of form from Jorge Martin this season, of course, with the near identical machinery, the 2023 Ducati that Jorge Martin has at his disposal. And after a couple of moments of ill fortune in the early races of the season, he is putting such a consistent run of form together. Of course, winning over 15 laps yesterday was one thing, but can he do it over double the distance this afternoon? The 30-lap German Grand Prix, which, as we've already discussed, will be punishing, but will the Martinator be celebrating after 30 laps of the Saxon Ring?
Never had 3 Grand Prix podiums in a row in his MotoGP career as Jorge Martin. Yesterday, it was interesting, wasn't it, listening to Bagnaia and Martin dissect their sprint duel. Pecco Bagnaia was saying that he's done a lot of work looking at his race pace on that soft rear tyre. The medium rear tyre is what Martin had done a lot of work on. Thankfully, after some rain on Friday and Saturday, which created some drama in the 2 MotoGP qualifying sessions yesterday morning, we're going to get a full dry 30-lap German Grand Prix. What will be the pick for that rear tyre? Will it be the asymmetric soft or the medium? Harder on the left-hand shoulder, of course, because of the 10 left-hand corners, which really do stress and abuse the left-hand side of that tyre. And you do feel, as we have the hottest conditions of the weekend by quite some distance, it would be a bold move for anybody to run a compound softer than that hard. I would be gobsmacked if anybody did go for the medium front tyre. I quickly saw Marco Bezzecchi in the press room last night as he was explaining his frustrating and disappointing 7th place at the conclusion of that sprint. He was one of a small select number of riders that did go for the medium front, and he tried to find some solution to his understeer issues. He just said, absolutely not a prayer, not a hope in hell he can make that medium work over 30 laps today. So you do feel it's going to be a straight showdown in terms of the front tyres. You can clearly see there Enea Bastianini, the very distinctive yellow banded hard Michelin front. Just going to have a quick look at our commentary box sprint. There's a few riders filtered to the grid. I can see Morbidelli, Alex Marquez, Augusto Fernandez. They've all got the hard front tyre fitted, of course. So has Luca Marini, rather. Pecco Bagnaia, the world champion, filtering his way to pole position. He's got the hard front tyre on as well.
But also take a brave rider at this stage with the climbing temperatures to go for the soft rear tyre. Perhaps those riders who maybe are feeling it's worth a little bit of a gamble this afternoon, those playing catch-up, maybe the Aprilias further back. Fabio Quartararo, who's back in 11th place now on the grid, promoted by Marc Marquez's withdrawal from the Grand Prix. Will any of them feel like rolling the dice and going for that softer rear tyre? Pecco Bagnaia pulls onto pole position. The question, of course, is can he turn the tables on Jorge Martin in this afternoon's Grand Prix, and can he get to the first corner first? Because of course he's got Jack Miller on the fast starting KTM. He starts on the outside of that front row. Jack Miller didn't exactly get the ideal start yesterday. He was a little bit distracted by a tear off under his front wheel yesterday. Managed to rectify that, and when he looked up the lights were going out, but Jack Miller still on that fast starting KTM got to turn 1 first. So Pecco Bagnaia, we're expecting to spend quite a bit of the Grand Prix leading it, but he might not lead around turn 1.
Yeah, Miller was suffering. We could clearly see it, couldn't we, in that sprint yesterday with the corner speed, the turning of the Ducati. He couldn't handle it through turns 10, 11. Who'd have thought we'd be saying this just a few years ago, that the Ducati had the best turning and corner speed around this short Sachsenring circuit. That's what they're all here for. That's what they're all fighting for. The MotoGP World Champions Tower. Who will be the recipient of that award in late November in Valencia? Don't discount this man, Johann Zarco. Pole here 2 years ago in 2021. He kept fellow Frenchman Fabio Quartararo very honest, didn't he, in that 30-lap race here 1 year ago in much more mentally and physically testing conditions. But Zarco fancies the chances of the podium here. Yesterday it was a bizarre reason for his poor start. His front ride height device hadn't disengaged going through the first 3 corners. Bizarrely, it was actually the clout he got from Brad Binder coming out of turn number 3, which actually popped the front end back up. And that when ensued a pretty frenetic fight between Binder and Zarco, which ended with a super aggressive move from Zarco on the South African through the high speed at turn number 11 on that very last lap. Very shortly though, we're going to get a revised grid to run you through, of course. The grid changing with Marc Marquez sadly withdrawing from this 30-lap Grand Prix.
Let's take a look at it then. Pecco Bagnaia is on pole position from Luca Marini and Jack Miller. John Zarco, Marco Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin are together on row 2. Can Martin make any progress to put himself in the frame for a Sachsenring double? Alex Marquez, he heads the 3rd row of the grid from Brett Binder and Aleix Espargaro and Air Bastianini, Fabio Quartararo and Maverick Vinales. They share row 4. Fabio Di Gianantonio, Augusto Fernandez and Miguel Oliveira on row 5 ahead of Frankie Morbidelli and Taka Nakagami. Ralph Fernandez starts from 18th position on the grid, and completing our 19-rider field is Jonas Folger. Just looking through the tyre options there, Matt, as they flick through the page. Everybody has gone to the grid at this stage with the hard front, medium rear combination. That is our information at the moment. Of course, they have around about 15 minutes to potentially change their minds.
Just as we like it, a straight shootout in terms of the tyre choice. Nobody taking what would be a real left field gamble, a punt on that medium front tyre, just as Marco Bezzecchi and Johann Zarco did yesterday. Now then, this time 1 year ago, Fabio Quartararo won the German Grand Prix, and with an exit for Pecco Bagnaia, he left the Sachsenring 91 points clear in the championship. At the moment, though, it's tough going for Yamaha and the Frenchman, Fabio Quartararo. What can he do? Let's hear some pre-race thoughts of their team manager, Maio Meregali, who's with Simon.
Maio, it's been a tough season so far, especially as Matt Burt was just mentioning, leading the championship, winning here a year ago. I noticed that both machines have different rear wings on. I imagine you're also working on developing and getting information even during the race.
For sure, now we are also starting to think about exploring things that we started doing that at the beginning of the winter test, but then the time there was not enough, and now I think we know what we have, and if we keep using what we have, we already know the results. So that's why we are really thinking to try to touch different path and seeing if we can get something, because we know this package very well. We have been, as you know, very conservative, but we do believe that there is something again that this package can give us, and now it's time to exploring.
Okay, one last thing about the race, Maio, is like in general it's been all about qualifying, and if he can qualify, especially Fabio, in the right place, he has the pace for the race. What about today?
Yeah, also yesterday was like this. I don't want to say that the pace was good enough to fight for the podium, but realistically now we are thinking more about 5th, 6th, 7th, and the pace he had was good to stay with them. It was a pity that okay, we entered the Q2, but we could not at least start from the 3rd row rather than the 4th. It's a work in progress, and we will for sure find something, find a way to get out of these difficulties. And but having said that, it's going back to your question, to the qualifier, super important.
Maio, thank you for your time. I hope you find something today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Mario Meregali. So Yamaha trying to find some solutions to what's been a very bleak 2023 so far for the Iwata factory, with no Marc Marquez, no Joan Mir, no Alex Rins for HRC, and of course Yamaha's involvement in MotoGP reduced to just 2 bikes this year. Hard to think when the last time there was a top flight Premier Class Grand Prix that started with just 3 Japanese motorcycles on the grid. Of course, just Nakagami for LCR Honda and the 2 Yamahas of Fabio Quartararo and Frankie Morbidelli on the grid. Not expecting any new parts to work wonders for Quartararo and Frankie Morbidelli from 11th and 16th respectively. The flip side of that coin is you do feel that if there's not a double podium challenge coming today from Pramac Racing, it will represent a pretty frustrating Sunday, with Zarco and Martin looking so strong already so far this weekend. What are the pre-German Grand Prix thoughts of their boss, Gino Borsoy, who's beside me?
Gino, yesterday you had 2 of the fastest men on the circuit, not just Jorge, but also Joan. It's double the distance today. Double the distance. What is the differences?
Wow, the difference is so big. Yesterday we use as all the rider on track, the soft on rear, and today medium. We have some data. We check even today, this morning during the warm-up. Seems that the medium on rear it's okay too for all the long distance, but they have to manage at the end for sure. So will be not easy, especially because all the riders have the same choice. It's all about how to manage the rear tire for the end of the race.
One other thing I'm thinking is Joan Zarco regularly is strong on the medium rear tyre at different circuits. What about Jorge? And what about Joan?
Well, in terms of data, we saw in the last 2 days that the medium on rear for Jorge was okay too. He was fast with the medium, so let's see. Finger crossed, because we know and he know he have a really good pace. About Zarco, last part of the race is always fast, but it's a different race, different temperature. You know, tricky point is the first corner. Let's see if they are able to make the first good lap. I think they have also a good chance to make another good race.
Thank you, Gino. Good luck.
Thanks to Gino Borsoy. Thanks to Simon. As we mentioned, the Pramac boys, Zarco and Martin, they are both in search of 3 podiums in a row for the first time in their MotoGP career. Zarco has not done that since mid-2016 when he successfully defended his Moto2 title. 4th on the grid, his best qualifying in 11 since Motegi last year.
Fabio Di Giannantonio here starts from 13th on the grid. If you'd told Fabio Di Giannantonio a week ago in the Tito Sprint in Sachsenring you'll finish between Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo, or just ahead of the pair of them, he'd have been pretty happy with that. But as it is, Di Giannantonio found himself in, fortunately, outside the points. 12th place for him in the sprint. Di Giannantonio looking to try and replicate his best MotoGP result, which came here a year ago.
KTM carry big hopes in this feature race, don't they, with Jack Miller starting from the front row on the podium in yesterday's sprint, and you can never discount the hard-charging Brad Binder from fighting his way through the pack. Let's get some thoughts from KTM Motorsport Director Pit Byron with Simon.
Pit, at the circuits early in the championship, it was really clear your bike was so good entering and exiting. It struggled a little bit more with those long turns, long fast turns in Mugello, but I knew you guys wouldn't take that lying down. It looks like you've already improved it a little bit over practice. What do you feel about both your riders and your machine going into this race?
Yeah, I mean, after the highlight in Jerez, and honestly, we expected a little bit more in Mugello to have it a little bit more easy. It was difficult for the riders there, and they still did a great race. But we found out a little bit what happened there. We were missing drive grip, so that's back here. What we could see yesterday going into the start and finish straight. So I feel we are good. We are back where we can be. It's a tough fight out there, especially with the Ducatis. The boys put the level very high. But yeah, being in first row with the start performance of our bike, I feel we can do a great race today.
Thanks, Pit. Best of luck.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to Pit Byron. That's what they're all chasing this afternoon then at the end of 30 laps. That is the Sachsenring race-winning prize next to the biggest prize in motorcycle racing. It is the World Champions Tower. This man had the honour of putting his name on that illustrious list of MotoGP World Champions from past history. Pecco Bagnaia, then the 26-year-old Italian, going from pole position. Let's go down to Simon Crafar, who's got Massimo Rivola, Aprilia Racing CEO, after a difficult weekend for the Nawali factory.
Massimo, please give us your thoughts. It's quite clear you still haven't been able to get those results that we think the Aprilia can get.
Again, we think we have a better bike than the result we are getting, but until we don't demonstrate that, it's just our fault if we don't achieve it. So let's see if we can start decently. Yesterday was not too bad, the start really, especially from Maverick. So it was maybe we find our way for the start. I'm very curious to see now. Race pace is not the best that we could have. I mean, speaking about the top guys, but we also see that when you are racing in the middle is different than when you're racing in front. So if we can get, let's say, a good, we can go out of the first two corners in a decent position, maybe we can keep that, otherwise it's going to be very tough.
Okay. Thank you, and best of luck today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Massimo Rivola. Yeah, harsh words from Aleix Espargaro yesterday. He said, we're having a very bad championship. He left under no illusions his thoughts on Aprilia's current plight. Some angry words as well, saying that Aprilia at the moment have one of the worst starting devices, launch devices in MotoGP. What can he do then, going from 9th place on the grid? He pops up one slot, doesn't he, or one row at least, with Marc Marquez's unfortunate absence through injury. Fabio Quartararo just having a few last-minute words for Canal Plus, the French TV network, as we draw close. Myself and Lewis are going to stay quiet very, very quickly, because we're about to hear the special atmosphere of the German national anthem here at the Saxon Ring.
Wir würden uns natürlich sehr freuen, wenn ihr euch dazu dann auch entsprechend von den Tribünensitzen erheben könnt.
Vaterland, danach lasst uns alle streben, brüderlich mit Herz und Hand. Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit sind des Glückes Unterpfand. Blüh im Glanze dieses Glückes, blühe deutsches Vaterland. Blüh im Glanze dieses Glückes, blühe deutsches Vaterland.
A stirring rendition of the German national anthem. The German Grand Prix in front of a bumper crowd is just under 10 minutes away. What can we expect from Muni VR46? Luca Marini goes from a career best second. Marco Bezzecchi from the middle of the second row. Pablo Nieto is on the grid with Simon.
Sorry, it's Paolo Ciabatti with me. Paolo, your man, Pecco Bagnaia, is leading the championship. There's quite a few other Ducatis that are extremely competitive here. The bike to beat. Please give us your thoughts.
Yeah, you're right. Pecco is leading. Maybe he could have a much larger, wider margin without those crashes, but it's important. He's leading. It's true that we have many Ducati competitive here also. So Sachsenring is not anymore a track which doesn't suit the Ducati as it was in the past. Obviously, we miss a win here since 2008 with Casey Stoner. Yesterday was great, but the sprint race doesn't count as a GP. So it would be great for Ducati to be able to be again the winner of a GP of Germany. Let's see which rider. Hopefully it's a Ducati rider, but I'm sure that Pecco will be there, but you know, Martin for sure, and I think some other guys will be fighting for the leading group and managing the tire with this hot condition, with this heat. is going to be, I think, key for success.
Paolo, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Unmistakably, Paolo Ciabatti with Simon Crafar on the grid. Of course, 6 Ducatis start within the top 7 grid slots now with the withdrawal of Marc Marquez. So the possibilities are quite high for a victory for one of the Bologna Bullets. Of course, the other 2 spots within the top 8 occupied by the factory KTMs. Jack Miller from 3rd. What about Brad Binder coming from the 3rd row of the grid? Got stuck behind Johann Zarco yesterday in the sprint, or got stuck behind Luca Marini and beaten by Johann Zarco on the final lap. If he can get off the line a little bit better today, Brad Binder feels he's got the pace to better his sprint showing yesterday.
So the pole position at 1:21.409, a drying track yesterday. Predicted race pace based on what we saw over the 15 laps from Adventure Sprint winner Jorge Martin, around a 1:21.4. But this is a journey into the unknown in many respects, because there was rain disruptions on Friday, rain disruptions yesterday as well. So the riders certainly have not had the prep time that they would normally have liked coming into this 30-lap Grand Prix of Germany, as Ducati continue to try and continue their domination of MotoGP. They're going for their 4th podium lockout of the season. Termas, of course, kicked off this golden run, and they've locked out the top 3 in our last 2 feature races in France in Le Mans and in Italy in Mugello. Simon Crafar just saying from down on the grid that maybe Aleix Espargaro taking a last-minute and 11th hour gamble on the soft rear tyre as he tries to fight his way through early on that, well, from the back of the 3rd row as it stands now. If he does get through, he's going to have to go into time management mode, isn't he, pretty quickly. Race winner here then 1 year ago. Who would have thought, fast forward 12 months, that was the last time we saw this man stand on the top step of a Grand Prix podium. The last time that he actually led a Grand Prix was right here in the Sachsenring 1 year ago. An all-French 1-2, of course, with fellow Frenchman Johann Zarco fighting his way through to the runner-up spot.
And the possibilities are exactly high that Fabio Quartararo is going to change that today. Of course, coming from 11th on the grid, Fabio Quartararo just that sole podium this season back in Austin, and that was from a season's best qualifying, the only time this year that he's started inside the top 7 on the grid. But it's really going to be crucial for Jorge Martin to try and make up ground early on in this race. You could argue he was helped slightly in the sprint yesterday by Jack Miller getting to the front of the race and just keeping Pecco Bagnaia boxed in a little bit. If Bagnaia can hit the front early, he'll be keen to try and put as much time into Martin if the sprint winner does find himself stuck in a little bit of early traffic.
Jorge Martin's had that special winning feeling here in Sachsenring previously, before a double winner in the Red Bull MotoGP Rookies Cup all the way back at the start of his career in 2013 and 2014. Moto3 winner here in 2018 ahead of Marco Bezzecchi, one of his rivals here this afternoon. And of course yesterday, the sprint winner here at the Sachsenring. But he wants the big one. He wants the 25 points and a first Grand Prix in the Premier Class victory in 35 since Austria 2021. The fans are enjoying life in the Sachsenring sunshine. This is the one that they've all come to see, although the man they all came to see if he could extend that golden run of 12 successive victories in 12 starts here at the Sachsenring. Marc Marquez on the Repsol Honda, unfortunately sidelined after this morning's bruising 4th gear high side going through turn number 7, his 5th spill of the weekend, and Marquez opting, does not feel ready to race, probably mentally and physically, for this 30-lap Grand Prix, so he will sit it out. So then, Jack Miller, 3rd in yesterday's 15-lap sprint. He goes from the back of that front row of the grid on the factory KTM. Luca Marini on the Mini VR46 Ducati, a career best starting position for the 25-year-old Italian. He goes from 2nd alongside compatriot Pecco Bagnaia, 21 points clear in the World Championship. The race winner 7 days ago, Mugello. Is there more brilliance from Bagnaia here in Germany?